friends, and welcome back to another flower letter. Now, as you guys know, in the previous letter, we know that Charlie is missing in action. And I don't know about you guys, but I am super excited to get through these letters and see what happens. If you guys missed that video, I will post a link in the top so you guys can go and check out that video telling all about the war and how it started, the newspaper clipping that we got, which was really, really cool in the last letter. So this is letter number 22, and we're going to jump into this one and see who it's from. Okay, here we go. And I just want to let you guys know that I am previously getting over a cold, so I do apologize if my voice is a little scratchy than what it normally is. I do apologize. So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the last letter, Audrey wrote to Charlie's mom asking her to send the letter that his father had for him, just to give him like some closure, or just to help him, maybe wherever he was at, she would hand deliver it to him before he went out into the war. And his mom wrote back saying yes, she would do that. So I'm going to say that's what this is. So we're going to read this first and then we'll read that last. Looks like we got 2 pages, so you guys bear with me. This looks like it's going to be a long one. Okay, so it says, "My darling Charlie, May 22nd, 1944. The general should be hand delivering this letter to you, which may seem somewhat strange once you read my letter and the contents of the letter that accompanies it. However, I hope you would understand the need for such precautions. My darling, I have quite a confession to make to you, and I hope with all my heart that you will receive it in the same magnanimous way you received my news concerning Captain Fairbanks. What I have done was done first unknowingly, then out of necessity, because the safety of the person involved was in jeopardy. I'll start with the good news. Remember when we first met at the Rangers 4th of July dance? Well, I wasn't entirely honest with you about why I was at Camp Forest that night. You see, I wasn't there as my father's personal secretary. I was actually there at the request of a man I only met once, who went by the code name Lionheart. Do you remember how I told you my father, sister, and I spent Christmas in London a few years before the war? Well, that's where it all started. While we were there, the general received a rather mysterious visitor. He came in at night, and I happened to meet him for only a brief moment as I led him to my father's study. I had enough contact with the sort of man who came to see the general late at night to know what this man was. But he wasn't just a spy, Charlie. He was a spy who had been deep undercover in the heart of Germany for almost 20 years. My father and his visitor talked in his office for over 3 hours. When the man finally left, I asked the general who he was. In a state of awestruck wonder I had never seen from my father before, he simply shook his head and said it was Lionheart. When I asked him who Lionheart was, he said that until that night, he was nothing more than a hushed-up myth and whispered legends among the Espherian circles. The general didn't speak of Lionheart again after that until about 6 months before you and I met. That's when I began receiving code messages and my father's direct line at the OSS office. The messages came addressed to someone named Red Rose. When I passed this information on to my father, he said the messages was from Lionheart. And from then on, no one was to even know of their existence except the general and myself. When they met in London at Christmas, my father had told Lionheart to use the code name Rose Red as a signal whenever he wanted to send a message to my father. Then he told me I was Rose Red, and he designated me as the only person at the OSS below him with clearance to receive and decode Lionheart's messages. I took all of Lionheart's wired messages from then on, which included countless pieces of vital information concerning the Nazis, Hitler, their motives, and their vital information that has been critical to the war effort. Sometimes Lionheart would ask me to do favors for him. They were all harmless requests, and with the general's permission, I did them. The last favor Lionheart asked of me was what brought me to Camp Forest last 4th of July. I was heading down to the sea to check on the lead he'd given us anyway. as he asked if I wouldn't mind taking a small detour to Tomahawk to check up on the son of an old friend. All he asked was for me to let him know if the soldier failed to treat me well when I arrived. This was a puzzling request, but how could I refuse, especially after all Lionheart had done for Uncle Sam? So I went. When I walked in the Ranger dance last summer, I had no intention of staying. I was simply there to check up on a soldier, and then I planned to take the next available train back to D.C. But then I met you, my darling. You asked me to dance, I talked with you, and before I knew it, I was falling in love with you, Charlie Burke. What I didn't know at the time was that you, the soldier Lionheart had asked me to check up on, were much more to him than simply the son of an old friend. It wasn't until I spent Christmas at your mother's house that I discovered Lionheart's true identity. Your mother put me up in your old bedroom, and it only took me one look at your father's picture on your nightstand to know why Lionheart had sent me to Tomahawk. I could hardly believe my eyes, Charlie, not so much because I was looking at the man who'd visited my father in London that Christmas, but because I hadn't made the connection sooner. You're Lionheart's son in every appearance, right down to your impression, broad shoulders, and that darling dent in your chin. The only difference is the shade and shape of your eyes. You get those from your mother. I wanted to tell you that your father is alive ever since, but your mother begged me not to. The general also made it very clear how much danger Lionheart would be in if I did. Now, however, with what you're about to face, or have already faced with the invasion, I knew I had to give you every reason I possibly could to come home to me. That's what brings me to the bad news of my letter. The general received information a few weeks ago that Lionheart was taken captive by the Germans. One of his wires to the OSS was intercepted by Nazi intelligence. As soon as he realized his 20-year cover was blown, your father ran. He made it almost to the court of France before he was captured. Last the general heard, Lionheart was being held prisoner in the French village of Escurie-sur-Mer. I think I'm saying that right, guys. I'm sorry. I can't possibly imagine what you must be feeling or thinking right now. Knowing I knew this and kept it from you has weighed heavy on my conscience since Christmas. But my darling, I swear to you, it was not only at the most urgent pleading of your mother, but also out of the most genuine concern of your father's safety that I kept it from you. The price he has paid for our country, the price you and Grace have had to pay, is above and beyond the call of duty. The intelligence has passed on to us the information that he sent me to New Mexico has also certainly saved us. Not just our country, but possibly the world in more ways than the world is presently capable of understanding. Perhaps his own words will make his reasons more clear to you than I ever could, which is why, upon hearing of Lionheart's capture, I wrote to your mother begging her to break her 24-year silence. The letter accompanying this is the reason your mother got so upset when you opened your father's old army trunk all those years ago. You see, the trunk containing this letter, your father wrote it for you and asked her to deliver it to you if he never came home. He wanted you to know who he really was if he didn't get the chance to show you himself. Your mother got so upset that day because she knew the very existence of that letter put your life in more danger than it was already in. The only way she could protect you was to keep the contents of it secret until, heaven forbid, it was no longer necessary. Will you forgive me, my Charlie? You must feel robbed right now. Robbed of 24 years that you couldn't know your father, depending on what the Germans have decided to do with him since his capture. You must still never know him. I can only imagine the confusion that must be overwhelming you. I have prayed every day since learning your father still lives that you should someday get the chance to meet and know him. You truly are the best man I've ever known, Charlie Henderson Burt. So I wanted him to be able to come home when the war was over and see that for himself. Perhaps, God willing, he still may. I love you more than life, my Charlie. You are my heart, my soul, my whole world, forever and always. Please forgive me and come home safely to me, darling. Come home and build our beautiful house. Come home and build a life and family with me. I don't want a happily ever after if you're not in it. All the love that is in me, and a kiss. Audrey Rose. Okay, guys, that was the letter that she sent, and I have to say that I'm just as shocked as you guys are that to find out that Lionheart is Charlie's dad and that he's alive. Like, that's just crazy. Like, I didn't even expect that. Let's go ahead and let's see what this is. This looks like the letter that his dad wrote him. We got Alright, so we got a couple of pages here. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can. Okay, so this says, Dear Charlie, October 18th, 1926. If you're reading this, then your mama has received news of my death. That statement is probably quite confusing to you considering you already think I'm dead. The truth is complicated. And depending on how old you are when you read this, my boy, it may not make sense to you for some time. But I don't believe in melancholying, so I'm just going to tell it to you straight, son, and hope when you're ready that you'll understand. When I served in the Great War, I was recruited into a new and specialized program called the Corps of Intelligent Police. The CIP was part of the United States official program MID. I was sent to a combat intelligence mission with another soldier, Private Winslow Fairbanks. We were to gather information on the Germans just after the Battle of Amiens that started the 100 Days campaign. Fairbanks and I had been rivals since we first joined the Army and CIP program back in 1917. But when we come to executing a mission, we worked real well together. We had orders from our Colonel Ralph Van Diemen to infiltrate Ludendorff's highest ranking officers and gather what information we could about the location, infantry numbers, weapons, and other preparations for battle after Amiens. After we got in and got the information we needed, we arranged to meet up with a few other CIP agents on assignment before heading back to our unit. When we reached our spot, however, it was clear the other agents hadn't been as lucky as us. They were dead, and German soldiers was waiting to interpret us. So now we had to get the information. We gathered back to Van Diemen, and I also knew Fairbanks stood a better chance if I stayed behind and held the Germans off. So I sent him on and postponed the inevitable for long that he could get beyond harm's reach. I thought that would be the enemy, but the Germans surprised me and said I'd fought too bravely for them to kill me. Instead, they took me as a POW. Thankfully, as POW camps go, I was treated well, and I even became good friends with a few guards, some Jewish fellows who taught me German. When the war was finally over and most of the officers and guards of our camp abandoned post, all prisoners was left behind to fend for ourselves. My Jewish officer friends were some of the guards who lingered behind. They decided to take pity on me and invited me home with them. They helped me get the occasional odd job so I could make enough money to return home to your mother. However, I got to see firsthand the state war had left Germany, and my friends began to tell me about a particular political party called the Workers' Party. It was causing the Jewish community a great deal of concern. I was still a CIP agent, so I decided to attend one or two of the party's meetings to see if I can gain any important intelligence to take back to America. The first meeting seemed harmless enough, but the second was more enlightening, among other things. I discovered why my friends were so concerned. Not only were blatant anti-Semitic philosophies freely shared by party members, but it didn't take me long to surmise that the Workers' Party, many of the parties had potential to overthrow a German government that had been fatally weakened by war and was already unraveling. It was still too early to tell, so I asked my friends to keep me informed about the political state of things in Germany. They agreed, and I left Germany for the United States. In February 1919, I was reunited with your mother, and it was a rare moment that I never forgot as long as I live. She was even more beautiful than the angel I married, and despite the fact that I was returning home 6 months after the war had ended, she never given up hope that I would come back to her. We had a few months of uninterrupted peace, despite a war-weary world being ravaged by the third wave of the Spanish influenza pandemic. Then my Jewish friends began writing to me again. Their letters were subtle at first, but as the months carried on, their letters grew more frequent and disturbing. It was then I decided to take them to Colonel Van Diemen. He agreed that after the war we just fought, it would be in the United States' best interest if something was done about it. So in September 1919, I was back in Muncie, this time in official capacity as an undercover CIP agent. The Workers' Party meeting I attended was held at the Burger Brockkeller, an old run-down beer hall. And not only had the parties grown significantly more radical and dangerous since the last meeting I attended, but there was a man there, an officer from the German army, who had obviously been sent undercover to observe the meeting's proceedings that night as well. I watched this man carefully throughout the night to see just how the current German government would respond to the Workers' Party. As each new speaker took the podium at the front of the hall, I watched this soldier become enraged by something one of the speakers had said, that he shot up from his chair mid-lecture and proceeded to rail on the poor prisoner from some 15 minutes or so before coming to himself. In the shocked silence that followed, I never heard Anton Dexter, one of the party's founders, whisper the following to another gentleman near me. "This man's got the gift of God," he said. "He could use him." At the end of the meeting, I saw Dexter approach the man and offer him a pamphlet of some kind. I immediately approached Dexter and asked if he had any more of those pamphlets, that I was very interested in what was said that night and wanted to learn more. When Dexter obliged, I asked him who the interfering man was. He told me that he just learned his name was Adolf Hitler. That night I read Dexter's entire pamphlet. Its purpose was to explain his philosophies, which consisted mainly of building a strong nationalist pro-military party made up of members from the working class. Unfortunately, his pamphlet also happened to share many anti-Semitic sentiments. It wasn't long before I realized how deceptively appealing Dexter's philosophies would be to the working class of Germany. The next morning, I wired my findings to Van Diemen. By nightfall, I received new orders that changed the course of the family's lives from then until now. Van Diemen, under the instruction of President Woodrow Wilson, ordered me to go into deep cover for the unforeseeable future. "We just learned your mother was expecting you before I left for Germany, so following his orders would mean I might never get to meet my own child. I can't express how I wrestled with that reality, Charlie. I always wanted to be a father more than anything. In the end, however, knowing I was doing my part to create a safer, freer world for you, the most fatherly thing I could do at that moment. So I resolved to do my duty, but under two conditions. First, your mother would be told the truth, and second, when or if I was killed, and if your mother concurred, you would be told as well. I felt that if I couldn't meet you and raise you in person, I could at least leave you a legacy to help you on your way." Van Diemen agreed to my terms, and the arrangements were made. Deep cover required that I erase myself from my previous life with your mother. My death of the influenza was orchestrated shortly after that purpose. Hank Burt was erased, and I became Hans Brandstalter. I was a spy for the United States government. President Wilson assigned me the codename Lionheart in honor of my sacrifice, and I ventured out into the new life, unsure if I would ever meet my unborn child or see her mother again. From that moment on, my every action became about the mission, which was to infiltrate the Workers' Party and see where it led it in Germany. If the party fizzled out, I would be able to come home. If it didn't, I was to be the United States government's eyes on the inside of Germany. It wasn't until 7 years later that I learned your mother had given birth to a son. That's when I decided to hold Van Dieman to his word and write you this letter. Now, my boy, if you're wondering if my sacrifice was worth it, I write this letter now. I can't say the young soldier I heard in that Munchie bar left, Adolf Hitler, has since joined the Workers' Party and is climbing its ranks quickly. Only history would tell if my sacrifice was a worthy one. Either way, I hope with all my heart that you will forgive me for not being there to watch you grow into a man. I assure you a day hasn't passed since I last saw your mama, her belly swollen with you growing inside, that I haven't ached for you both. Take care of her for me, son, and be a good boy. I love you, your papa, Hank Burke. I like this kind of lion, like this symbol that they have on here. And then, of course, you can go to Flower Letter if you want to learn more about what was said in the letter, guys. So, okay, guys, so that's it. That is very shocking. We learned a lot of truths in this letter, a lot of mysteries that were in some of the other letters. I would never have thought Charlie's dad was alive and that he was lying hard. I wouldn't have thought that he would have got captured now. So now we don't know what's going to happen to him, and now we know that Charlie has disappeared. He's missing in action, so we still don't know what's going on with that. Hopefully we're going to find out really soon in the next letter, guys. Please just keep watching. As we go, we're getting really, really close to the end. Once again, I'm getting very close to renewing for the next year. So we have a whole entire new letter for next year. I'm still deciding. I think I'm pretty close on a decision. I don't think I'm going to tell you guys yet maybe what I'm going to get. I'm going to leave it as a surprise. If you guys like this letter and you like my previous letters, please stay tuned. I am really enjoying this letter. If you guys love puzzles and you love mystery and you love just a good little story and getting like a little surprise in the mail here and there just to kind of cheer you up, this is a really simple little letter that you can do. I love getting them in the mail. It always cheers me up to just sit and read. Kind of relaxes you, you know, and I like the little puzzles that they give you that you can kind of work on throughout the day or just when you have time. It is $12 a month to sign up and subscribe, and you can subscribe to multiple letters. You don't have to do just one. And I do hope to see you guys back here in my next letter. Hopefully we're going to find out some maybe better news. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!